Oh.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's the SCB Steelers Podcast presented by DEK Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. And we are very, very glad to be part of the Variety Sports Network. And, of course, the show originates from the Bradshaw Bourbon Studio. And here's a guy who showed up right at the limit. Scarves, all right.
I tell you what, Chris. I tell you what, Mike. I'm a guy that.
I'm going to get to a question right away.
Yeah.
Ian, what's more irritating, Taylor Swift or Tony Romo right now?
Oh gosh, Taylor Swift, but it's
Launch them both into the sun.
yeah. I mean, it's like a 1A, 1B, but the whole, I don't know. Maybe I'm of the wrong generation that I just don't get the whole Taylor Swift obsession. But like, I don't know. You know, I think, Ryan, did she play at like an AFC championship game or something when she was just starting to become famous? I feel like I saw her play like before a Steelers game and did like 2 songs.
Oh, no, it was a Steelers home game, but it wasn't even a playoff game. I want to say it might have even been a preseason game. Like that's how
like a season opener or something.
Yeah,
this was before she was Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it was.
Meanwhile, not to offend any Swifties out there, but she is literally one of the biggest cons of all time.
Whoa!
Her dad, it was like a broker for JP Morgan. Like she started out as this trailer park country girl.
Right.
She's never been poor in her life. I don't want to hear that shit. I don't even have anything against her, and I don't even want to necessarily blame her for all of this. But like every time she breathes, they have to show her on the. It's just so annoying.
So, is she the female equivalent of Kid Rock then?
Don't be talking about Kid Rock, okay?
Wow.
I mean, have you ever seen it? This dude looks like he just jumped out of a Detroit area trailer park, and he grew up in a very nice place, Mr. Robert Ritchie.
Here's a guy that's fooled us all.
He did fool us all. He was just Bud Light. Anyway, welcome in, everybody. Great to see Burner's back. Melvin's back. Aaron's here to harass me about Harbaugh leaving, which is fine. I can go back to being a full-fledged Michigan fan again.
I was telling Mark before the show started, it's incredible. We tweet this out like 15 minutes before the show starts, like, oh, we're going to do a show on Wednesday instead of Thursday this week. And people still join us. We love you guys. This is awesome.
I figured we'd be talking to Walls tonight.
Yeah.
Ben, by the way, is he's in the air. He is on his way to.
Here's a guy who's on a plane.
Yeah, and it's not just any plane, boys and girls. He's on an Alaska Airlines flight, and I hope he's got the seatbelt fastened extra tight because, well, you know what happened. Thankfully, nobody was hurt when the door blew off at 16,000 feet. And anyway, so hopefully he's having a good flight right there. And yeah, Aaron just mentioned in the chat, September 24th, 2006, she sang the national anthem and performed at halftime of the Bengals game. So it was regular season that she got. Wow, man. Holy cow. There you Johnny's here. Fuck you, Johnny. There we go. Got that out of the way. Oh, man. Hey, so let's kind of reset the table here from what's gone on. The Steelers have, and fill me in here, guys, because it's been a crazy couple days for me. But I know that they interviewed Brian Thomas, right?
Mm-hmm. Thomas Brown.
Excuse me, Thomas Brown. I've been looking at so many names today. Thomas Brown from the Panthers. Have they formally interviewed Kliff Kingsbury or Zach Robinson yet?
No.
I don't know if they formally interviewed them, but the names were connected to the Steelers or said there was interest there or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Scarps, I'm going to ask you this question. Feel free to answer the Tony Romo, Taylor Swift question if you want to, but I wanted to ask you this. You're an offensive coordinator. You've been contacted by the Pittsburgh Steelers for their open offensive coordinator position. It's the Steelers. You're going to take the call. You're going to do the interview. Okay. Now, all that said, what is one of your first questions when, of course, Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, and AR2 says, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah. How much are you going to pay me?
I purposefully asked that question because I wanted to see which way you'd go. Either the fact that Art's a cheapskate,
Well,
or about the quarterback situation.
Well, the reason I would ask about money is because I'm assuming that in the interview they would tell me what the plan was for the quarterback room, and they would tell me what the plan was for, do I have the autonomy to hire my own staff? Do I get to make those decisions? And then I posed this. Twitter sucks. So does X. But I posed this. I said this earlier this week, and we've been talking about it on the chat. Half the league is looking for a new offensive coordinator, whether that's current vacancies or new coaches being brought, like half the league. So half the league is looking for a new offensive coordinator, right? So this isn't like there's one or two jobs available in this, it's like only the Steelers or the Panthers, for example. They're the only two teams that have openings. So, the offensive coordinator position is there's a lot of them, and candidates have leverage, and they can say, hey, I'll interview here, but there's certain things that I want. So that being said, just because it's the Steelers does not mean it's an attractive position. Their quarterback room is mid at best, and if Mason doesn't come back, it's even worse. Number two, and this is what pissed me off about people online this week. They're like, the Tomlin extension is a done deal. They just haven't announced it yet. I'm gonna tell you this right now. I am not going to sign a contract unless I know for a fact that Mike Tomlin is being extended, because he only has 1 year left on his deal. So if Michael looks at me and goes, yeah, I'm definitely getting an extension, and Art looks at me, but you know what? Enjoy your damn flight, Ben. You know what I mean? like put on a movie, get a drink, enjoy the flight. And or Art says, yeah, well, Art says we're definitely going to extend Mike. I need some confirmation, right? And then at the end of the day, and this is what really pisses off Steelers fans, is that they think people will work here for peanuts because it's the Steelers. And I'm going to tell you this right now, that is not true. If you really want somebody, you gotta pay the guy. And this is for someone that comes in there, let's say it is Zach Robinson. And Zach Robinson comes in there and says, hey, you know what? You've had shitty quarterback play for years. My resume speaks for itself. I'm going to need this amount to do this. And if let's just say it's $2 million or something like that. I do not picture the Steelers paying any coordinator $2 million. I think what was Canada make it? 750, which, for him is a lot, but they're gonna double that, triple that for an offensive coordinator. I just don't see it. And out of respect for the organization, and I'm grateful for my time there, and I appreciate Art. I loved his dad, but they do not hire just to hire, and they do not open the wallet to bring in coaches. They have the smallest coaching staff in the league. I'm holding my breath when I want them to add more coaches, but if they truly want an innovative dude in here, you got to pay him.
So, Ian, I'm going to ask you that same question, but at the same time, I'm also going to have you address this too. what Scarps just talked about, does that speak to a bigger issue that we've talked about for years on this show and this site? The Steelers sometimes fall into this, well, we're the Steelers, so we can do this while other teams have to do that. Have we finally reached a point where we need to pay somebody to run an NFL style offense?
Yes. I mean, and I think Tomlin kind of alluded to that a little bit in his postseason press conference when he said, I think we need to look outside. I'm not opposed to bringing in more coaches on, either side of the ball. I mean, ultimately, it's Art's decision of how much he wants to open up his wallet and pay people. But at the end of the day, I think Tomlin's starting to realize, especially looking around the league, that like, oh, hey, look at how many stinking, assistant coaches the Rams have on offense, right? They've got guys with titles that are basically made up, right? It's like offensive analyst and, senior offensive assistant. What does that even mean?
Like assistant to the traveling secretary.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Or assistant to the regional manager, But at the same time, those guys go on to get offensive coordinator jobs other places because they've been just associated with Sean McVay. So but the Rams are willing to pay coaches and especially young guys and bring them along and develop them, and we're not. The other thing I'll say is that, we talked on the show, and even though Ben is drunk on an airplane chatting with us, he doesn't want to, go watch the Mission Impossible movie or something like that.
I highly recommend Airport 77 if you're on a flight.
Okay. At any rate, to Ben's credit, I believe he said on the show last offseason that not only bringing Matt Canada back would mean this year was a lost year, but also that the Steelers should hire someone like a Jim Caldwell to be a senior offensive assistant. That way, if you had to fire Canada mid-season, you had someone who had some play calling and offensive coordinator experience already in-house that you could kind of promote into that role, even if it wasn't a long-term solution. So credit to Ben for being absolutely right about that, last offseason. And that is kind of something, it seems like there's one of two routes they could go here. They could hire a guy like a Zach Robinson, who's never been a coordinator before, who's a young up-and-coming guy, who seems very smart, has a pretty good coaching resume for a relatively young guy, and then also hire like a senior offensive assistant, basically, give an old guy like a Caldwell or a Frank Reich or someone like that title, pay him a couple shillings to be in the building and just, say, hey, here's what we're going to, you can come and just, give us your wealth of knowledge about how an NFL offense works, and we'll see what we can build here. The other option is that they just hire one of those old retread guys who has been offensive coordinators before and probably failed at it, or got a head coaching job and failed at that, like a Kliff Kingsbury. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I've said for a while on this show that I firmly believe that there are just guys who are just better at being coordinators or just better at being position coaches than they are at being head coaches. Yeah. And maybe Kingsbury's one of those guys. What worries me about Kingsbury is, and I'm probably getting into your next question of what do you think about the candidates that we've talked about so far, but what worries me about Kingsbury is you look at all of his teams going back to the Texas Tech days, the first half of the season, they would start it on fire and then they would crash the second half of the year. And it's happened over and over again with Kingsbury teams. Just look at, what they've done the first half of the year versus the second half of the year. So, does that same thing happen as an offensive coordinator, that he designs a good offense? They come out like the world on fire for 8 weeks and then like teams figure out what they're doing and start to shut them down and he can't adjust to it. Yep. So, I don't know. I mean, we'll see where they land, but personally, I'd rather go with a young, innovative guy that kind of knows how to run a modern offense, knows how to get receivers open, than a retread, but we'll see what happens.
It's been so fascinating to watch these offenses the last couple of weeks in the playoffs to see how they get receivers open, how they get receivers in matchups. It's mind-boggling because of what we saw in our offense the last couple seasons. Scarps.
Yeah, and Melvin brought up a point, and I'd like to discuss that. He was talking about players didn't buy into what Canada was doing, and I think that's true to a certain extent. But I would also say that when players made plays and when Pickett was doing half decent at quarterback, they didn't bitch and moan. You know what I mean? And then they fire Canada, and then they sucked, and everybody was mad. But then Mason takes over. And yeah, it was a different cadence to play calling, but it was still Canada's offense. And there were guys open. Mason was getting them the ball on time. Mason was getting them the ball in space. So I guess I would just say that, you can bring in the most innovative offensive coordinator you can imagine, but if the quarterback play still sucks, this team's still not going to do anything. You know what I mean? Like it's like if so, as much as and and Steel Dad, of course, we'll talk about some of the candidates, and I'm just, my opinion of them is just very surface level. But again, like Zach Robinson could come here, and Kenny Pickett still sucks, and that is a real possibility. And again, this team, when Mason took over and Mason started making plays and guys started making plays, there was a total different energy in that building. There's a total different energy on the field. You could see their body language. So as much as Canada did suck, I think that if they had half decent quarterback play in that offense, he would have lasted the season, but not come back this season.
I will stand firm in my belief that, and I'm not saying he would have set the world on fire, but I am saying they completely screwed the pooch by bringing Canada back this year. They've set the team itself back a year. And here we are, but we're going to have to deal with it. And look, I speak for all Steelers fans. I hope Kenny Pickett turns it around. He's an absolute stud next year. I've seen nothing to make me truly believe that's going to happen, but stranger things have happened. Ian, you wanted to make a point on Mr. Dan Orlovsky's comments.
Yeah, Dan Orlovsky had some what I thought were interesting comments today about Pickett specifically. And he basically said that, from what he's seen out of Pickett's not a guy that you can just be like, here's an offense, go run it. You have to design an offense for him. Ben Roethlisberger was a guy that was, we've talked about it on the show before. It's like, he's going to go out and he's going to run what he wants to run. Sometimes he'll just audible the play on the field and do what he wants. And there's quarterbacks like that. There's quarterbacks that you can just be like, just go run the offense, right?
Absolutely. Orlovsky
basically said, for Pickett to be successful, you have to scheme him up an offense, almost like how, a Miami or a San Francisco schemes their offense to scheme guys open and be like, here's what you're running, and here's, it's almost like that, you're going to be a system quarterback or whatever it is, but that's the best way to make Kenny Pickett successful.
Yeah.
And, for these offensive coordinator candidates, for the guys who are the retreads who are just looking for a job, they might find it, be like, oh yeah, I'll come in and I can fix him. I can do something like that. I'll take that on. But for the young guys who, the Zach Robinsons of the world, like, if you tie yourself to our quarterback room and our offense and it doesn't work out, then, you're setting yourself back a bit, because as we know, the NFL is not necessarily a meritocracy as far as coaches go. It's you've got to pay your dues and work your way up through the system and prove you can be successful at every step in the road and all that. So if I had to guess right now, I'd guess we wind up with one of like the retread type guys.
It's a very long, hard slog to get there. To one of those coordinator positions, and it can be a really fast drop.
Yeah, and the fine folks on X this week, had to remind me that if a coach doesn't want to come here, because they don't want to try to save Kenny Pickett, that they're not good at their job, because who could ever turn down the Steelers? Like, again, there's a lot of factors that come in, and think about, like, I understand that work, being an NFL coordinator is a lot different than us normal folks. There's only 32 OC jobs in the league. But again, think of it as when you are coveted and there are multiple job offers that you can accept, and you weigh the pros and cons, right? You say, okay, well, this one pays me more money, but I don't like leadership. This one pays me less money, but I really believe in what they're doing. This one pays me no money, and I have to work with Kenny Pickett. I'm probably not going to take that one. Like, it's the same thing that we all weigh when we take a job, or on the job hunt, etc.
No, it is. And if you look at these three guys that they've currently either interviewed or are planning to interview, start with Thomas Brown for a second. I mean, he's coming off his first year as an offensive coordinator at Carolina, and I honestly don't know what you can truly take from that to judge it. I mean, that roster is shitastic, and offensive line was brutal, but to that point, he had got to work with Chase Young, number 1 overall pick. Bryce, God, I'm all over the place tonight. I got to stop drinking.
Gucci.
And then you look at Kliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray. He also got to work with some pretty good quarterbacks in college. How much of that's on him? How much of that's on their just overall ability? Zach Robinson over there in LA with the Rams and stuff. Matthew Stafford showing up there. I think the guy probably had a pretty good idea what he was doing. But that said, it's still your job to do some things there too. So I don't know, based on those guys. I think they're going to really open this thing up. I think it's going to be several more candidates coming in. That said, as we've talked about, there's a real problem right now because you got so many damn openings. I mean, these jobs the pegs are going to start falling into the right holes, and now all of a sudden you're going to be stuck.
Yeah, and starting with Thomas Brown, I agree. Like, it's hard to give him a fair shake, because Carolina is just such a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
But he if you want to talk about developing quarterbacks or whatever, Bryce Young had some growing pains this year. But you know what? He's still better than Kenny Pickett. Now, I am critical of Pickett, and yes, I really lay it on thick for the show. But like, Bryce Young is a former number 1 overall pick. And yeah, you know what? He did not have the best circumstances, and neither did
Melvin. Just gave me PTSD. Yeah. Thanks, Melvin. Yeah,
there it is. Yeah. But like, I mean, I don't want to judge Thomas Brown. Whatever.
Yeah. Hey, Burner's got a great question here, and this is what part of what our discussion was going to lead to. So what in Pittsburgh would be attractive to an OC looking for a new home? I would start first and foremost with, hey, Mike Tomlin, tell me you've got a contract extension. I would start there. And then the next thing has to be, I need exactly what your plan is in that quarterback room, for all the reasons we talked about.
Yeah. And, and I say that the job isn't as attractive as people think. And I'm going to stand by that, but I'm going to go against that right now and say, the quarterback play in for this team has been so bad for so long that if someone is willing to take a gamble, and let's just say they do turn Kenny Pickett's career around and the offense looks somewhat respectable, that's a win. So I could see, so the expectations are so low that look what happened with Mason. I mean, Mason wasn't even playing spectacular, but like, the guy was efficient and consistent, and we were all like, "Holy fuck, this guy should be the starter next year," which is absurd, even though I'm a Mason fan. So I do think there is an opportunity, but also I could see that scaring people. Like Ian said, maybe for an established guy that has a reputation in this league that just wants to get back into it, they're not taking that big of a risk by doing it. But a young guy trying to make a name for himself could fall flat on his face with this opportunity.
Man. Absolutely. And I just, man, it's just going to be such a gamble for any coordinator, because you are essentially hitching your little red wagon to Kenny Pickett, at least right now, until we know more about what the QB room looks like. But the other thing we talked a little bit about in our chat today was, what about Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach? I mean, it's very possible you could get an offensive coordinator that says, hey, Pat seems like a nice guy, but the way he does things with his O-line does not work with what I'm doing with my offense. And so that leads to the whole question of what kind of, I hate the term power, but what kind of authority does Tomlin allow that OC to have?
Yeah, I was engaging with some folks today on the old X, and I said, the news is that Mike Sullivan is probably not going to be retained, and Mike Sullivan actually has a couple offensive coordinator interviews.
Yeah,
and I think good for him, first of all, but I also think that, teams are doing their again, there's a lot of openings around the league. Teams are doing their due diligence. Maybe Mike Sullivan doesn't. What are you talking about, Melvin? What are you talking about? Come on, man. We engage. What are you talking about? And so that just so again, there's a lot of openings. But I suggested, and I suggested and this is even to benefit Kenny Pickett, is, keep Sullivan as like a senior advisor or something. He's not a position coach. He's not a coordinator.
Yeah.
And right away, people were like, no, he sucked. He sucked at his job. He didn't develop Kenny Pickett. He shouldn't get a promotion. And that's not even a promotion to me. To me, that's a demotion. Like if you're not, you're just another voice in the room. And then I thought more about it. I'm like, well, why is it that Sullivan's not going to be retained, but they've already said that Pat Meyer's likely to stay, Eddie Faulkner, Frisman Jackson, Alfredo Roberts. And then I'm sitting there thinking, like, why do those guys get to stay but not Sully? And then it's like, did they already make those decisions? Did Art, Omar, and Tomlin already say, hey, these guys are staying? So if I'm an offensive coordinator and I come in and they're like, yeah, you can't bring in your own staff, you got to work with these guys, I'll be like, what? I don't want to do that. And again, I understand that Sully didn't develop Pickett, but once again, there's a very good chance that Kenny Pickett just sucks, and we have to accept that's there's a good chance.
Yes, we do. What about here's sometimes when you get a quarterback that obviously had a very good senior year in college, and his year is what got him drafted in the first round. Let's be honest. Do you go out and maybe try to find the coordinator that worked with him then? Mark Whipple, who's currently QB coach, I think, at Nebraska. He was with the Steelers in the early 2000s. Yeah, I know. And Nebraska isn't exactly setting the world on fire, but you just wonder, because we're not inside that locker room, we're not inside those offices, those meeting rooms, and is it something where Pickett just needs to be in some kind of comfort zone? And let's be honest, nobody was in that with Canada in that building. So I'm just thinking outside the box a little bit.
No, I have a couple thoughts with that. Nebraska is not known for its powerhouse quarterback play.
No, especially throwing the ball.
And Mark Whipple is 66 years old. No, just absolutely no. And you know, my friend of mine and I were talking about this today. Was Matt Canada led offense at Pitt went into Death Valley and beat. And I think Clemson was number 2 in the nation, and Nate Peterman was the quarterback. James Conner was the running back, and a bunch of with all due respect, a bunch of no names for Pitt.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
So, and look how good Matt Canada did at this level. So, getting back to Pickett, yes, he had a really good senior season, but how much of that was that it was his 5th year in the league, that the ACC was not good that year.
True.
There aren't many Wake Forest and Dukes in the NFL. And I said this from the beginning. I never thought that they properly evaluated Pickett because he played next door. I think they felt the pressure from not taking Marino 30 years earlier. And I think that they absolutely reached for Kenny Pickett. But to Melvin's question, if money wasn't an issue, who would I want the offensive coordinator to be? I mean that's a good question. There's a lot of eligible candidates, but I will say this: I would rather they strike out on a young offensive mind than to hire an old fart that we already know what's going to happen.
Agreed. And Ben's advocating Clint Kubiak. He's a passing game coordinator for the Niners. I also, and I know he's a Michigan guy, but Brian Griese has done a really nice job with Brock Purdy in San Francisco as far as being a play caller. I can't speak to that. I don't know, but he played in pretty traditionally run heavy offenses, relied a lot on play action. So that seems to be what Tomlin wants to do. So I'm open to that, Scarps. I'm with you. I would rather go young and innovative, creative, hungry than bringing in a retread.
Here's a list of guys. I'm just to rattle these off real quick. Here's a list of guys that I'd like to see just added to the staff, and I don't care in what capacity. Clint Kubiak, Dave Girardi, Alex Tanney, Luke Getsy, Wes Welker. Yes, that Wes Welker. Ken Dorsey, Mike Kafka, and then I said Shane Waldron, although Shane's already got that. But these are all guys that are young, up and coming. And again,
where is Wes Welker at right now?
Wes Welker's with the Dolphins.
That's right.
He's their wide receivers.
Receivers.
And I know we don't have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but you can't. I mean, Wes Welker used to torch us all the time. Maybe bring in Julian Edelman to be our wide receivers coach. But again, I joked about this on X. I said we're all getting our hopes up, and they're just going to bring back Kevin Gilbride. And I feel I really do feel that way, that they're going to hire just some old dude, and they'll spin it as familiarity and play calling experience.
Are you surprised Leftwich hasn't popped up yet? I'm a little surprised.
I'm not surprised. I am surprised, but I'm not surprised because I think he's been hitting them up for a long time now, and I think they're a little annoyed by it. And I don't think they want to do business with him, but they're trying to be respectful of it.
So he's like Horseshack on Welcome Back, Kotter. Oh, yeah, he keeps trying to get the attention of her. Yeah,
there used to be,
or that tight end who kept trying to get into the building that they had to.
Wesley
Saunders.
Yeah.
No,
still tweeting for a job.
It's funny because and I appreciate that the players always used to do it, but when there would be people that would wait outside the building for hours with merchandise, on the street, outside the parking lot on the street, and they would wait for players and coaches to sign their shit. There was always one guy that had a fucking box full of stuff, and
I'm sure that was just going to go home and be on his mantle.
I can picture Mike Tomlin leaving the facility tomorrow, and he looks out the window. He's like, "Is that Byron Leftwich?" He's like, "Coach, man." He was like, "Come on, man, let me in the building." Come on, man, sign me up.
Isn't Didn't Mike Kafka get a couple head coach interviews?
I think he's
Yeah.
he's coveted.
Hey, Northwestern guy. He's brainy. He's brainy. So
Now here's a guy who can get a metamorphosis of the offense done.
Can't spell it.
Mike, that's
a deep cut
why.
joke for the English majors out there.
English majors.
Yeah.
Let me swing it over to the defense for a minute. It sounds like, as of reports just a couple hours ago, that the Steelers are close with Teryl Austin on a 2-year deal to continue with him as the defensive coordinator. Ian, your thoughts on Mr. Austin sticking around to run the Steelers defense?
I don't love it, but I think when he was hired, we all kind of asked the question of how much control does he actually have, because we all kind of know that Tomlin sort of runs the defense also. But Austin's defensive schemes have been very vanilla and very – I know he was working a little bit shorthanded, but, I mean, you've got guys in zone coverage that just drop to a spot and hang out there and don't even try and, like, stick to a guy and – like, or even like cover guys near them. They're just like, I'm just going to wait here and we'll see what happens. Oh, that guy ran by me. Okay, well, that guy ran by me too. And, yes, they need to get him some corners that can actually play man defense, but his resume in Cincinnati was not all that good. And his resume here, I think, has been bolstered by the fact that we got a lot of turnovers in the red zone. Like, they were throwing it out there of, oh yeah, they had the number 6 scoring defense in the league. Yeah, because we got a buttload of turnovers in the red zone that kept teams out of the end zone or from kicking field goals. So this defense, and I think Ryan talked about it during the year, was not as good as the statistics said it was. And some of that was the injuries, but also some of it was just the play on the field. The schemes weren't as good. And, when you have a guy like TJ Watt, he can kind of make any scheme look good. Yeah. But nevertheless, they played Minka out of position all year. And I have concerns about how they distribute things across the defense, but they just got to get them more talent and, they got to get them more talent. And yeah.
How much do you have to say, though? I mean, the guy was literally dealing with people off the couch.
Yeah.
At linebacker, at safety to an extent. I mean, and I don't mean to make it an excuse, but do you have to consider it?
I mean, I think he gets some credit for piecing some things together, especially at the end of the year. But at the same time, like, even when the starters were in there, they were having the same issues. Like, I felt like week 5, 6-ish time frame, it started to kind of come together, and you started to, Quan Alexander and Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts, they started to kind of figure out a rotation and figure out what their roles were, and they have to make some contract decisions with a few of those guys. So we'll see what happens. It could be a whole new middle of the defense, but playing Minka out of position all year was just inexcusable. And, and that was regardless of injuries, that they were playing KZ as the single high guy and putting Minka up in the box, and, you weaken 2 positions instead of 1. I don't know. It was a weird year all around. And just the way that the defense was kind of coached to, especially when they played zone, just to cover grass instead of covering guys and matching from the outside in and all this stuff we've been talking about for years. But at the end of the day, to Ryan's point early in the show, he's probably not super expensive, knows the system, is willing to work with however Tomlin wants to dictate things on defense. And so, it is what it is.
Yeah. And,
I don't love it is what I'm saying.
We oh my God, for a head coach that always talks about the standard is the standard and next man up, etc. We as fans have just grown to love excuses. Right away it's, well, they didn't have all their players this year. It's like, last time I checked, TJ Watt played 17 games and the head coach says he's the best defensive player on the planet. And anytime TJ Watt plays in a game, you got a shot. You know, you know, I'm not a huge fan of it.
Right.
I get it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but um, they get torched all the time by any half decent quarterback. I mean, look at Bailey Zappi this year. Gardner Minshew was tearing them up. Like Josh Allen in the playoffs. And I know they didn't have TJ Watt, but Brock Purdy, like CJ Stroud, like they get torched anytime. Like and this is wild, but like he might be the MVP, but the only time they ever do good against like a really good quarterback is Lamar Jackson, and they only ever play him maybe once every couple years. But even Stafford this year when they played against the Rams, TJ Watt literally Stafford threw it right to him like it's a TJ Watt play. So,
Right.
I don't, I'm not, I'm not opposed to keeping Teryl Austin, but like his numbers are absolutely skewed. As we talked about this on the show, he was like the first defensive coordinator to allow 500 yards in 3 straight games. He got fired for that. And the Steelers were like, you know what? This is a guy we could use, like that, like it's, it's just, and I'll say this too. We expect what we expect from TJ, but there's no guarantee Cam Hayward plays this year. I know he said he would, but there's no guarantee that he's coming back. We have no idea what this defense is going to look like. We don't know if Cole Holcomb is going to be healthy or Quan Alexander or whoever. And just like the Steelers have an opportunity to get better, all 31 other teams do as well. And the Steelers have tendencies, and teams often exploit that, including tight ends. So I'm not wild about it, but I do understand why they did it.
Yeah, I think you alluded to price probably fits. Familiarity probably fits. Opportunity to maybe deal with a healthier group. Is it possible that Austin is a good fit because he doesn't mind Mike Tomlin sticking his nose in on the defense?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. So yeah.
Whereas if you go and get a what's his name that just left Miami and is now with Philadelphia now, Fangio.
Yeah,
I don't see him being real, crazy about the head coach sticking his nose in very often. So I wonder how much that plays in.
Yeah, although they had a superior coordinator in the building and let him go. So
well,
I shouldn't say let him go. Weren't able to retain him. I guess
right.
is but that Brian Flores was a assistant and was offered a coordinator's job, which was a promotion. So the one thing that I'll say about that, which was the other reason they should have kept Flores, is they lost Flores. He went to Minnesota. He's been there a year. If he doesn't get a head coaching job and stays in Minnesota another year, if he gets a head coaching job after that, Minnesota will be eligible for 2 third-round comp picks because of the
adjustments to the
minority diversity promotion clause thing, but you have to have coached somewhere for 2 years. So even though Flores was already a head coach, he was already a really good coach, but if we'd been able to keep him around for a second year and then he had gotten a better job somewhere else, we would have benefited from that rule.
And here's a guy, a guy that I would have loved to have had here, and he was available, is Wink Martindale. He has familiarity with the North, and the Giants' defense was terrible. They were terrible this year because they were very young and they were very injured, but they led the league in takeaways. I had to double check that, but whether it's excuses or facts, doesn't matter. He was available, and they didn't have to retain Teryl Austin. And here's the other thing, and I know Wink Martindale's old too, but Teryl Austin is 58 years old, and you look at.
I think Wink's only 60, isn't he?
Yeah. So they're both old, and even though I mentioned Wink Martindale, but it goes back to this whole age thing. And you look at the dude for the Ravens, Mike McDonald, not to be confused with the Doobie Brothers lead singer, but the point, like they kept talking about him all game long about how like he's going to be the next head coach, etc. And he's 36 and he's doing a great job. So like, you know, as much as I want him to get younger coaching wise on the offensive side of the ball, I think that they should probably look at getting younger on the defensive side of the ball, because, you know, as much the game has evolved, you got to play defense different. So.
And what do we have? The second or third most expensive defense, I think, too. It's pretty pricey over there.
And I mean, that's a factor of having veterans, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys on rookie contracts are cheap. Veterans are expensive, and that just is what it is.
You know, Martindale, I was with you. I thought he would have been fascinating, but, you know, you wonder what kind of stories come out, you know, because obviously he and Dable did not get along in New York. I mean, that was pretty well documented throughout the season. But I'll tell you this, and you kind of alluded to it, Scarps. You know, I didn't see a ton of Giants games this year, but his defense always played hard. I mean, they did. As bad as they were at times, guys were flying around, and you know, sometimes that's all you can ask in those situations. And yes, Dan, Wink Martindale was in fact the best host of Tic Tac Toe. There's no question about that. Did he later go on to do Joker's Wild, or was that what he did first? I can't quite remember my early 80s game shows there on weekday mornings. But in any case, Pat Freiermuth is entering the last year of his contract. And I think Jerry Dulac reported today that he expects an extension for Freiermuth to be coming. Ian, is it a no-brainer for you to extend him, or do you have a little consternation?
I mean, it depends at what number. I mean, everything's about numbers, right? I don't know if I would give him. You know, $15 million a year like the top tight end, you know, the George Kittles and Travis Kelce's are getting. But I think, you know, if you find a number that's workable, the big concern with him is health and availability. I mean, his ability is there when they can get him the ball. It's just, is he available? You know, but even, I mean, you even look further down the list. I mean, you've got guys like, you know, Hayden Hurst in Carolina is making $7 million a year. I mean, tight ends are pricey for the, you know,
it's even surprising.
Yeah. And that's, and Hurst is probably like 15th or 20th in the league in salary. I mean, heck, you know, Gerald Everett for the Chargers was making $6 million a year. So, yeah, I mean, you got to find something that works, but at the same time, I wouldn't hate keeping him around, but there's just that availability question.
But man, you look at some of the tight ends, and we talked about it kind of in our pre-draft build-up last year. There's been a lot of really good young tight ends this year. You know, Kincaid up in Buffalo for starters.
Yeah.
Brevin Jordan down in Houston is exceeded anything I thought he would do based on what I saw on film. You know, and there's one other is it guy up in Green Bay, maybe? I can't remember. But you know, so I look, I'm not saying you just go pluck a guy on the draft. It's not that easy. It's never been that easy, but I don't know. Freiermuth, he goes and has one of those big games like he had, you know, against the Bengals, and then just kind of, then he's just a guy, you know. And I'm not saying that he should be putting up Antonio Gates every week by any stretch. I mean, that's rare, but it just seems like he disappears too often for me. I don't know. In any case, Scarps. Are you watching Mason Rudolph tomorrow on DK?
I'll probably catch the after, not live. I'll probably
Okay.
catch it afterwards.
Gotcha.
For Muth, I agree with Ian. It has to be the right price. His health is a concern. He is a horrible blocker. It's not his fault that we passed up on Creed Humphrey again, just to appease Big Ben, or just to please Big Ben. The problem though with it is that Darnell Washington is a project. I don't really think he's going to be that great of a tight end. His legs concern me. His knees concern me. Maybe
he was more athletic.
As Ben has said, as Ben had said, maybe we can just convert him to a tackle, and then Connor Hayward's okay, but he's whatever. But I don't think it would hurt to look at tight end in the draft and then see who's available on the free agent market. But I do not want to pay Pat Freiermuth like top level tight end money. I'm not sorry to say that. He is, he's just, there's just too much inconsistency there. And yes, I know quarterback play has been whatever, but I don't think he's worth that type of money. But there's also not a lot behind them.
Right. And that's I'm curious to see how it works out. And as you both pointed out, it comes down to the financials. Guys, we didn't do this last week. So I have in my hand here our over-under predictions or predictions in general from the preseason.
Oh.
And since Ben is mid-flight, he can just listen along and bemoan his bad selections. Kenny Pickett, over under 21 and a half TD passes.
In his career or this year?
We should have known, right?
Yeah.
Ian, you said under. Mm-hmm. The rest of us had over.
Oh, I hate myself.
I knew it.
I think if I recall correctly, and we can go back and check the tape, but I'm pretty sure I picked all the unders on Pickett because I said he wouldn't play all 17 games. And
which was true. Okay. All right. TJ Watt. I put the number at over under 17 and a half sacks. Ian was over. Scarps, you were even. And Ben and I were both over. Did pretty good there.
Yeah.
Najee Harris.
Yeah,
I put the number at 1,100 yards. Ian, you and Ben had over. Ryan was under, and for some reason I'm not recorded on here. I don't know why. What did he end up with? 1,000?
1035.
Yeah. Okay. Deontay Johnson. Over under 100 receptions.
Ooh.
All four of us under.
Oh.
Yeah. Deontay Johnson, over under 7 touchdowns. This is interesting. Ian and Ben were under. What did he end up with? 5?
Yeah.
Scarps was even, and I had the over. What was I thinking?
I mean, we're all Kenny Pickett was going to throw
doing
25 touchdowns,
right?
6.
Yeah, it should have all just come crashing down right there. Would TJ get the sack record? Let's see. I think Scarps and I said yes, and Ian and Ben.
It was would TJ or Cam break?
Oh, that's right.
Sack record.
That's
first.
what it was. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because I see the C there. That's for what it was. Cam.
Yeah.
It turned out to be TJ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see here. Alex Highsmith, 14 and a half over under. All four of us under.
All right. Well, he
nailed
was at 7, so there we go.
George Pickens, I believe it was it 1,000-yard season?
Was it 1,000 or was it 8 touchdowns? I feel like
because I can't
remember.
I was doing this quickly.
Remember that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It might be 8. Yeah, I think you're right, Ian. And we all had the under. And what did he end up with?
5 also.
Five
He and
also.
Deontay both had 5.
Yep. Kenny Pickett, over under 3,500 passing yards. You are not going to believe this. All 4 of, no, I'm sorry. Oh, you 3 had over, I had under.
I had over?
You did.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
But to be fair,
Uh-huh.
if you go back and check the tape, I guarantee you none of us said some outlandish number.
Oh,
I
no.
think we were
It was
I think we were thinking he was probably going to be like
3,700.
3,700 yards, 22, 23 touchdowns. Like we didn't
think-
say 5,000 yards and 40
No,
touchdowns like
no,
these
that's-
idiots did.
You're exactly right, is what we were talking about. Minkah Fitzpatrick, I put the interceptions on the year at 5.5 over under. Let's see here. Yowza. Okay. You 3 had under, I had over. Yes. Yeah.
He had 0
And then
playing completely out of position, but
what?
He had real quick 10 games this year. Minkah had 3 pass breakups, and that's it.
Okay.
He had no sacks. He had no interception, no forced fumbles, no fumble recoveries. He was like, he's just a little bit shy of Miles Jack last year, a little bit better than Miles Jack last year, but still made the Pro Bowl because that's
with the Pro Bowl is go run
that
around,
makes sense.
play flag football, man. The last one I had on here, and I'm drawing a total blank. CB, the initial CB 5.5. Who am I thinking of there?
Charlie Batch.
Charlie Batch. CB.
You sure it's not CH for Cam Hayward?
No, it's
Chris Boswell. Tell me what he missed.
You're right. That was the last one. Chris Boswell, over under 5.5 missed field goals. Ian, you were under. The rest of us were over.
Right.
Congratulations. Great year for Boz, the true team MVP.
Yes.
This week, guys, the Ravens host the Chiefs in the AFC, and of course, the Niners host the upstart Lions in the NFC. We got to talk about that statistic about the head official. That was fascinating as hell to me. And you guys correct me if I get this wrong. So it's Sean Smith is the official, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anytime an NFL head official does a game, the home team wins. What is it? 50.
Like 54%, I think, somewhere
54% of the time wins the game.
Right.
When this guy does a game, the home team wins only like 41%. Is that what it was?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, so the money in Vegas is just going nuts on KC because of that stat that came out. And of course, it leads to the conspiracy talk of the NFL wants Taylor Swift in a box, skybox on Super Bowl Sunday. Yeah. So I'm not going down there. Anyway, Scarps, what is your outlook for the Chiefs at the Ravens?
So there's a couple things here. The Dolphins defense was decimated with injuries. So was the Bills defense.
Yeah.
And this Ravens defense is legit. I know we hate them, but respect them. And this is a type of game that I look back to that Chiefs game at home against the Raiders when Patrick Mahomes couldn't do anything. He was running for his life.
Mm-hmm.
Mike McDonald is very, very good coordinator. He does timely things. I could picture Arthur Millette making some important decisions. Important plays that are going to cause Mahomes to make decisions that he doesn't necessarily want to do. I could picture Kermit the Frog being really pissed off. And honestly,
this way.
I cannot take fucking Taylor Swift for 2 more weeks. I just can't do it. But that being said, Taylor Swift aside, I really do think the Ravens have a good team this year.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught Lamar's comments. They asked him, like, what'd you say to the team at halftime? And he's like, "Oh, that would be that'd be inappropriate to tell you." I think that he is going to do whatever is necessary, and I think he's going to have a really nice day with his legs, and I think that that's going to set them up. The Chiefs have a good defense anyway.
Yeah.
I think the Ravens are going to win this game. I think it's going to be lower scoring.
I do too.
Probably this is a 20-17. I said 20-17 last week. This is a 20-17 Ravens win. And this is the other statistic going for you. The last 5 teams to beat the Bills in the playoffs have lost the following game.
Whoa!
And the Chiefs, I think the Chiefs have done it twice. It's twice the Chiefs have done it.
Wow. Oh, that's right. Okay, so last year.
Sorry, it happened with the Chiefs won. Chiefs beat the Bills, then lost to the Bengals.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, the Bengals beat the Bills, so the Bills were already out.
Yes.
Interesting. Holy cow. That's a good one. So you got the Ravens by 3. Ian, what do you got?
Well, here's a guy.
Here's a guy that wasn't ready for the question.
Here's a guy who is going to root for whoever wins in the NFC to win the Super Bowl. Here's a guy who wishes both these teams could lose.
Amen.
I hate Baltimore. They're playing at home, and they're pretty good at home when they play their starters. And credit to Baltimore, as much as I hate to say it, last year they went and traded for Roquan Smith. And on this show, we talked because we needed linebacker help. And we were like, I don't know, trade for Roquan Smith. Then you got to pay him, whatever. And Baltimore traded for him and paid him. And I mean, they have one of the best inside linebacker tandems in the league, and it shows. So if any team out there other than San Francisco, who probably does have the best inside linebacker tandem, like, it's not even fair that Fred Warner and Drake Greenlaw.
It's unbelievable how good they are.
Like, how is that even possible?
So good.
But short of those two guys, like, if anybody can figure out how to cover Travis Kelce, it's probably the combination of Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen. I think it's going to be close, though. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Chris Jones could wreak some havoc on Lamar Jackson, but I don't know if the Chiefs secondary is good enough to stick to the Ravens receivers for long enough. And I don't think the Chiefs receivers are good enough to consistently beat the Ravens corners and get open. The last time these two teams played, basically all of Kansas City's touchdowns were like 40+ yards. It was all on like random big plays that happened.
That's
it
right.
wasn't
That's
driving down the field. So I'll go, as much as I hate to do this, but I'm going to go Baltimore in a close one. I'll just say Baltimore in a close one.
I agree, guys. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think Justin Tucker will be the difference. And as much as I hate seeing the Ravens back in the Super Bowl, it is what it is. They've deserved the opportunity to be there. So that's what I'll say. Scarps, what about the NFC? Got the Niners on a mission to get to the Super Bowl against the Lions on a mission to get to a Super Bowl.
Man, I have concerns. Everybody's talking about the Lions defense, and they are the epitome of bend, don't break.
Oh, yeah. Cam Sutton brought that over from Pittsburgh.
Yes. And if Debo, but what concerns me more is the 49ers defense, because they got torched by Aaron Jones. And this is a game where Dan Campbell, I could picture him just fucking run it, like just like fucking just bang, and Jared Goff is notorious for throwing throwing a couple shitty passes and whatnot. Oh, this is so hard. Deebo Samuel doesn't play, that absolutely impacts Brock Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the Lions defense isn't that great. I don't even know what I want to say here. I
Sounds like you're torn between your heart and you. And
yeah,
mind
but like
here.
I am, but also like the Lions are not a fluke. They deserve to be there.
No, they're playing well. Good team.
They kudos, like Dan Campbell, build the fucking Dan Campbell statue already in Detroit because like he has done an amazing job. I think that, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do it. I think the Lions are going to shock the world.
Okay.
I really do. I think they're going to shock the world. And I'm going to say 27-24 Lions.
Woo! All right. Another field goal game. Ian, what do you got?
I think this is where, especially on the road, the moment catches up to the Lions and it becomes a little bit too big for them. Most of the San Francisco team, Brock Purdy aside, has been here before.
Mm-hmm.
Not only being in the championship game, but being in the Super Bowl a few years back. And here's another statistic for you.
Oh, boy.
Since 1992, the number 3 seed has only won the Super Bowl once.
Wow.
So we've got 2 matchups of 1 seeds versus 3 seeds in the conference championship games. But a number 3 seed has only won the Super Bowl once since 1992. So
interesting.
Yeah, no, that's not saying going to the Super Bowl.
Who was the team?
The 2006 Colts.
Wow.
Oh, that's right.
Rex
is that the team that went into Baltimore and won?
What did they do in the second round? The first round they played the Chiefs, and the Chiefs tried to just run the ball the whole game, and the Colts just stacked the box, and we're like, okay, you can do that.
They beat the Patriots in the championship.
They beat the Patriots in the championship game. Yeah. Did they beat the Chargers in the second round?
I thought there was one Colts game where they went in and they beat Baltimore, and I thought Baltimore was like the one, or maybe
yeah. But at any rate, the 2006 Colts are the only number 3 seed to have won a Super Bowl since 1992.
Actually, they beat the Ravens at Baltimore, 15-6 in the divisional.
Yep.
Okay. So
you're taking the.
I'm gonna go with the 49ers in a close one.
Okay.
Because I think their defense is better, and schematically their offense is so good, and Lamar probably wins the MVP, but honestly, I think Christian McCaffrey probably should be the MVP. And I think that's kind of that eventually is the difference maker. Like, there's only so much you can do to contain that guy. Eventually he breaks out.
Well, look, football games are won in the trenches. And the Lions are banged up at a very important spot, which is center. Ragnow is he's a stud. He's a warrior. The fact that he completed that game last week, he was in such a way. But San Francisco is so good up front and in the middle. I think they'll probably take advantage of that a little bit. And I think it's close. I agree with you, Ian. You got to wonder when the clock strikes midnight. I mean, the Lions are super talented. If Goff is allowed to throw, he's really good. I mean, when he can just stay on his spot and throw, he's really, really good. But if you get him to move around and stuff, that's when he gets really, really bad. And I tend to think that's probably what's going to happen here. So I'll take the Niners in a close one as well. Is Casey Kasem available this evening?
Always. Casey Coast to Coast. Oh, was I delayed?
Oh, no, I was going to give you the usual introduction of live from the tomb.
Sorry, go ahead. Here's a dead guy that wants to get started. Oh, God. Casey's Coast to Coast. American Top 40. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week that was January 24th, 1977. Our favorite correspondent, Ryan, is back again with us this week, and he writes, Dear Casey, Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. Casey, that's of course Simon and Garfunkel's The Sound of Silence, which plays in my head every time the Steelers throw short of the sticks on third down. It feels like I've heard that song about 1,000 times since 2020. Much like Garfunkel, the Steelers team president is named Art, and he's currently at Scarborough Fair looking for the Steelers' next offensive coordinator. I couldn't think of a Simon Steelers correlation. My mind kept wandering to Simon Kirk, drummer of Bad Company, and former Pittsburgh Pirates first baseman Randall Simon, who was arrested for hitting a Milwaukee Brewers mascot bratwurst with a bat. Getting back to the sounds of silence, I felt that way watching this weekend's divisional matchups. Casey, we're still far away from truly contending. I know we cut it to 7 in Buffalo, but who didn't know that Josh Allen was going to go right down the field to seal the deal? We're always flat, unprepared, and turn the ball over like we're handing out Halloween candy. After watching the Chiefs, did Jins really want to go to KFC? Did Jins really want to go to KC? Did Jins really? I hate myself. After watching the Chiefs, did Jins really want to go to KC? Fuck around and find out, as I always say. Casey, I'm being serious when I say this. Even if Mason comes back, the Steelers, right now, have a bottom 3 quarterback in the AFC. Let me be clear. We are more than just a quarterback away from contending, but you got to get the guy in here sooner rather than later. I do not expect Mason to come back, so that leaves right now Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. I'm sure the AFC is pissing themselves as we speak. Pickett is expected to be QB1, which I think is a big mistake. I'm not saying Whittle Kenny, with his Whittle hands and his Whittle football, doesn't deserve the shot to compete, but let's be real, Casey. He stinks. And I know the Picketologists will forever point to that 16-point game for the ages in Cincinnati, but I will not die on that hill. If the Steelers are serious about getting back to winning playoff games, they need to upgrade the QB position. If they do go with Pickett and he doesn't turn it around this year, he'll be working at the car wash. Well, Ryan, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Back in the number 1 spot this week, here's Rolls Royce with Car Wash.
Oh, wow.
Oh, God.
At the car wash. All right.
I
Oh,
can't
my
believe
KFC
God.
bit was nice. That
Oh,
was,
the KFC.
I didn't mean to say it. I went to did you really want to go to KC? But my first word after KC was fuck. So it was like KFC. Fuck around and find out.
Hey, get that 2 for $5 on those snack wraps at
And the
KFC.
I brought up the sounds of silence because if anyone still listed it, did you it at one point in the Lions-Bucks game,
Yeah.
I think it's when Detroit went ahead, scored the final touchdown or whatever.
Right.
Collinsworth was like, hey, I think there's a song, The Sounds of Silence. And I was just like, how do you not fucking know that song? Like, what are you talking about? It's like he wasn't. It's like,
What?
and I'm like, what does this even have to do with what's happening? Because Ford Field is electric. I can't even hear myself. Like I could hear it. Like,
it was nuts.
Sounds of Silence. Mike, God, Casey,
It was
Casey and Chris are similar.
It was not a good week for the color analysts because Romo was all over the place. Collinsworth was terrible as usual. I mean, I guess the good news is, we get Olsen this week. Olsen and Romo.
Well, they who was the first game?
Saturday was Ravens,
it was
Texans.
ESPN, so it was Buck and Aikman, and I actually enjoy them the most.
Yeah, they do a nice job. Yeah,
but Saturday night, the Olsen and who's the Kevin somebody,
Kevin
right?
Harlan?
No, it's not Kevin Harlan. What the hell? Who's Greg Olson's?
I know who you're talking about. I just can't.
Kevin
think of his
McCarthy?
name.
No, whatever. Anyway, he's the one that's. It wasn't him. It was Tom Rinaldi. Is the one that said that every time Anders Carlson goes out to kick a field goal, Matt LaFleur just prays the God that it goes in or whatever. And I guess like Matt LaFleur must have like jokingly said that in a production meeting, and Tom Rinaldi like went with it. And like Tom Rinaldi's a well-respected like reporter. So like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
so like, of course, Matt LaFleur was like, "Oh, I was just kidding. I didn't mean that." Meanwhile, I think he fucking did mean it. I think he did mean it. But yeah, and then
Kevin Burkhardt.
that's it, Kevin
Oh
Burkhardt.
yeah.
Kevin McCarthy's Mike McCarthy's brother. So
You know who I highly enjoy?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Ryan. Go ahead.
No,
finish
you're
your
good.
point.
But then it was Collinsworth sucked, and then oh my god, I can't stand Tony Romo. He's so terrible.
It's
He's
gotten
so
out of hand
bad.
with him. I don't think he preps anymore.
Literally, fucking like Nance will be like, "Oh, Tony, we're back at Buffalo again, where they've gotten 5 feet of snow over the past 2 weeks," and Romo will be like,
Well, Jim,
I don't know, Jim. Like,
Right.
Tony, there's 5 feet of snow in the stands.
Snowballs flying right at him. I don't know, Jim.
Well, Jim, when it snows, sometimes you got to run the ball and you got to call those checks and run those hot routes. And,
Literally.
Yeah.
Third play of the game, like Mahomes like misses the first down. He's like, now if the Kansas City Chiefs lose this game, they're gonna go back to this play right here and say, I should have gotten this right. It's like, Jesus Christ, Tony.
Relax. Ian, go ahead. Finish this up for the night.
Oh, I was going to say, you know who I highly enjoy listening to is Ross Tucker on Westwood One.
He's
Radio.
terrific. Yep.
And he's a Pennsylvania guy. Why I'm missing high school out east, but actually Alex the linebacker from the Lions. Anzalone, yeah, however you pronounce it. He was a YO guy too, so they got a picture together after the game, which was cool. But Ross, very good on Twitter, but also just highly enjoyable. Like if I'm out driving around in the car and have to like listen to the game on the radio,
he's very
always
solid.
very good. Yeah,
I agree.
They should get him on TV.
He fills in for Dan Patrick once in a while, which is on Peacock, but I'm not sure if he does college games now.
He does. He did a couple college games. I remember hearing.
Yeah, he's very good.
He is good.
Hey, thanks for everybody joining us on a Wednesday night. Jumped in there really quick to do that. Hopefully Ben is back next week. He flies around. We must have lost contact with him. Hopefully he didn't, fly out a loose door or something.
If his phone flew out the window, though,
maybe the phone flew out. That's right.
Ben.
Yeah. Anyway, make sure you check out the site, steelcityblitz.com, and follow us on all of our socials on X and Facebook and Insta.
Next week, we're back on Thursday, which is February 1st.
And everybody knows what that means. Scarps will be drinking.
It
better be.
It won't be Circle K Atlanta Scarps, but
it'll be right up there. Yeah.
It'll be Sheets. It'll be Sheets. It'll be Pittsburgh Sheets Jeff Reed paper towel dispenser.
Oh boy. So does that mean we need to go a little long on the show? Like maybe a little overtime?
Ooh, I don't know. I got to see what my schedule looks like.
All right.
Anyway, thanks everybody. Have a great night. And as always, go Steelers.
Ravens suck.
There we go.
Yeah. The Ravens suck.